I'm gonna give people some time to hop on in. Yeah. So this video is entitled "Message to the Black Man." Um, I want to start by going over this document right here. This is the draft of the Inter-American Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. This is from the Organization of American States. Right. So the reason why I'm going over this is because this is the first message to the black man. You need to know that you were not, well, let me say this. More say that we were not shipped over to America as slaves on boats. We say that we're aboriginal and indigenous to North, South, and Central America, right? That's what we say. A lot of our people don't want to believe that. So, even if you don't want to believe that you were already here, and you want to believe that you were shipped here as a slave from Africa, you're still an indigenous person. Here's proof. Indigenous people. So again, this is the Organization of American States. So this is what all the Americans say. So this is North, South, Central America. This is what these people agreed to, right? They're going to define an indigenous person. So what's an indigenous person? In this declaration, indigenous people are those who embody historical continuity with societies which existed prior to the conquest and settlement of their territories by Europeans. So that's obvious, right? The people that were here first. Then an alternative definition, as well as peoples brought involuntarily to the New World who freed themselves and cultures from which they've been torn. So that's a typo. It's supposed to say and linked themselves with cultures from which they've been torn. So it's saying if you believe that you were sent here on a boat as a slave, then you're going to free yourself and link yourself back to your culture. That's called in politics declaring your nationality. So that's the first message. Right? So based on that, this is, if you look up, if you just Google the Organization of American States, you'll see how many people are part of this, how many nations said this, right? So this isn't just my opinion. This is several countries stated that if you were here already and if you were forced to come here, you're considered an indigenous person. So all the, as an example, the 5%ers in the Nation of Islam says that we're the original Asiatic so-called black man. We're the original person of the planet. Well, that means you're indigenous to North, South, and Central America too. Right? So that's this. Now, this book right here, this is Noah Webster's Dictionary of the English Language. The American Dictionary of the English Language. Notice how the word American and English are distinct. Noah Webster's 1828. You can get this on Amazon. Check it out. American, a native of America, originally applied to the aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans. So originally applied to the brown-skinned people, right? Right? See that? So on the one hand, several countries said you're indigenous to America. On the other hand, in a dictionary, you're defined as the true Americans. So now, the next thought pattern you would think is, okay, if I'm not black, I'm an American, and I wasn't brought here, or even if you still believe you were brought here and you freed yourself, aren't you still a citizen of the United States, question mark? Right? That's what you would think, logically, right? Because you were taught that in 1850 whatever, 1857 or something like that, that the Dred Scott case of 18 whatever declared blacks that they were never meant to be citizens of the United States, and they couldn't be citizens of the United States. It didn't matter if they were free or not. So they told you that in 1868, with the adoption of the 14th Amendment, that made blacks citizens. That made blacks citizens of the United States, And then the 15th Amendment made it so that blacks can vote within the United States. And subsequently, if you're South American and you want to come to North America and you want to get naturalized, you get naturalized under the 14th Amendment laws. And of course, if you think that you're Indian, then you'll see that the 14th Amendment didn't quote unquote apply to you. So then they created the Snyder Act in 1921. So we're going to go over all of this. But first, let's deal with the 14th Amendment, right? So let me take this document out. You can get this from the Library of Congress. This is the Congressional Record. The Proceedings and Debates of the 90th Congress, First Session, Volume 113, Part 12, June 12, 1967. And you'll see on page 15641, you see where it says the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional. Right there. So you're not a citizen of the United States, black man. You're not a citizen of the United States, black man, which means what? If you're not a citizen of the United States, then what are you a citizen of? Oh, excuse me, sorry. If you're not a citizen of the United States, then what are you a citizen of? That's why you have to go back to that first definition that I showed you of the Organization from American States, where it said you freed yourself and connected yourself back with cultures from which you've been torn with or torn from. That's called declaration of your nationality, because once you declare your nationality, that determines your political allegiance. Your allegiance determines your citizenship. And then, of course, your participation in not only the upliftment of your people, but your participation in electing your own officials, your participation in teaching your people, your participation in protecting your society, your participation in engaging in commerce and owning your own business and then paying taxes to your society. That's what makes you a citizen. So what are you a citizen of, black man? Because the 14th Amendment is unconstitutional, which means you're not a citizen of the United States, black man. What is your nationality, black man? Because it can't be black, because that's what they taught you. And I already just showed you how they lied about the 14th Amendment. You believe that it was constitutional. Here's the record saying it's not. So you can't base your entire education or knowledge of self based on what they taught you. They taught you that you were black in their schools. That's what they taught you. They taught you that you were a slave in their schools. That's what they taught you. They reminded you every February that your people were slaves and your people were whipped and tarred and hung, and there was dogs that sent on them and there were hoses sent on them. So what is your identity? Right? Then, right, I brought up the Snyder Act of 1921, right? And how Indians believe that garbage, right? Okay. Let's go over this. And I'm going to give you a little bit of homework, right? So as I'm turning to this page in this law dictionary, look up Title 28, Chapter 6, Subchapter 176, Subsection 3002, Number 15A of the United States Codes. Just look it up. It's again Title 28, Chapter 6, Subchapter 176, Subsection 3002, Number 15A. Now, this is very important for you to look this up. Why? Because what I'm about to show you is going to make the connection for you. So this is a law dictionary. This is Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. Henry Campbell, Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition. You see where it says Indian tribe? Right? You see where it's underlined? It says a separate and distinct community or body of the aboriginal race of men found in the United States. You see that? Right? Now, if you would have went to Title 28, Chapter 6, Subchapter 176, Subsection 3002, Number 15A of the United States Codes, which would have popped up as law.cornell.edu, it would say that the United States is a federal corporation. Did it say country? No. Did it say continent? No. Did it say landmass? No. It said corporation. Now look, pay attention to this, right? Can there be Aboriginal people located on the continent of Africa? Yes. Why? Because Africa is a landmass, right? Can there be Aboriginal and indigenous people found in Asia? Yes, because Asia is a landmass. Can there be Aboriginal and indigenous people found in North, South, and Central America? Yes, because North, South, and Central America are landmasses, right? So now that we got that established, right? People are from land, right? Can there be Aboriginal and indigenous people found in Walmart? No. Why? Because Walmart is a corporation. What's a corporation? A corporation is just a group of people in action. So of course you can't be a race of people found amongst a corporation. There are no Aboriginal and indigenous Walmartians running around when you walk in talking about give me my stuff back and throwing spears at you and chucking spears and dressed in feathers. Right? So based on logic, by looking up Title 28, Chapter 6, Subchapter 176, Subsection 3002, Number 15A, you'll see that you cannot be a race of men found in the United States because the United States is not a landmass or a country, it is a corporation. Number 2, there's only one species as it relates to humans. It's called the human species. So if there's only one species, that means there's only one race. So how can there be a separate race of men? Even in the holy books, both the Bible and the Quran, it says that God or Allah created man so that, separated us by nationalities so that way we may know each other, not hate each other, just learn each other. Learn, oh, cool, that person has a different culture. That person over there does things a little different. I want to adopt some of that stuff because it's cool. Or I like how it fits into my culture because they practice by peace and we practice by peace. It's just they practice by peace a little bit differently. I want to incorporate that into my culture. That's why there's different cultures. Not as if there's different human beings. We're all the same. So if there's only one race, how could there be a separate race of people? All right? So two logical points. One, Title 28, Chapter 6, Subchapter 176, Subsection 3002, Number 15A of the United States Code, law.cornell.edu, states that the United States is a federal corporation and there cannot be indigenous people found in corporations such as Walmart, United States, CVS, Rite Aid, etc. Number 2, there's only one race, and it's the human race. So there cannot be a separate race found anywhere. Right? Then, number 3, check this out. Literally, we all learned in school that these Europeans are pilgrims, which means what? They're not from here, right? They're from somewhere else. They're pilgrims. They made a pilgrimage, came here, and then started calling themselves Americans. That's what we're taught, right? We're also taught that in 1492, Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, right? Then we were taught that he what? He was lost. Then what? What did he do next? He thought he was in India. Then what did he do? He named the people that he found Indians. So now, if you come to my house, and my name is Jamal, and you start calling me Fred, did you just find a new race of people? Or did I already have a name and then you changed it? Right? Secondly, if I know my name is Jamal, and you start calling me Fred, and I start adopting the name Fred, doesn't that mean that there's something wrong with me? Because my mom called me that, my dad called me that, my grandmother called me that, my cousins called me that. And here you are coming into my house calling me something else, and I'm agreeing to that? Isn't that strange? Okay, now think about it like this. If all the so-called black people in America who don't know who they are go to China and start calling the Chinese people Kung Fuian, you think they're going to adopt that name? Probably not, because those people already have an identity, right? Okay, so now think about this. Right? Christopher Columbus came to the Americas and branded people that were already here as something else, right? Those people started to identify as that name, right? Then those people started to submit to the foreigners that came here and called them that name and claimed power over them. and law that's called jurisdiction. So they claim jurisdiction over those people. Then those same Europeans that came here, branded those people something else, called them Indians, which they're not, stated several times that those people that they called Indians are wards of the United States, right? So now when you go to the law book, if you just Google legal definition of ward, you'll see that a ward is an infant or a person with an unsound mind, right? So now, of course, you would have an unsound mind if you continue to identify as a name that you were told was a mistake, which means it's wrong. Secondly, you're submitting to foreigners on your land that you say you know it's your land, but you're submitting to them. So you must be incompetent, because you will not go to China and start telling the Chinese people that their name is Kung Fuian and you have jurisdiction over them, right? So, just like with the so-called black people, who are really the same people as the so-called Indians, the so-called black people were given the 14th Amendment, which they believed made them citizens of the United States, right? I just showed you that was wrong. The so-called Indians were given the Snyder Act of 1921, which made them citizens, right? But here, in this case right here, United States Supreme Court case, it called Indians wards. So you're not a citizen, you're a ward, you're property. That's what that means. And there's a bunch of other case law to support that after the Snyder Act, right? So this is before the Snyder Act, right? This is before the Snyder Act, and Indians are called wards. This is after the Snyder Act, and Indians are called wards. This is also after the Snyder Act, right? And what? Indians are called wards. So the Snyder Act isn't your salvation. Nor is the 14th Amendment, nor is the 15th Amendment, which I just showed you. And you can reference or cross-reference everything I showed you as far as the case law on caselaw.findlaw.com. So watch this video again, pause it, and you'll see the case law and you can look it up. All right, so now, what is the point of all of this? The point of all of this is to show you this document right here. You can also look up, just Google House Resolution 1203 from the state of Georgia, and you'll see more details on how we're Aboriginal and indigenous to North, South, and Central America. So do that on your own. But let me show you this real quick, right? So think in your mind, all the problems that black people are having. Think. Just for a little bit. All right. One of the first things that probably comes to your mind is what? Gentrification. If not, the murder of our people, right? So I'd say the top two things is the murder of our people and gentrification. The next thing that comes to my mind is mass imprisonment of my people. Under mass imprisonment, the two main charges I can think of is one, drug charges, and two, gun charges. And that's basically it. Basically. Right? So now let's go over this. Let's go over this document right here. Now I just showed you how the Americans, as in the Organization of American States, via their Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, stated that indigenous people are those who embody historical continuity with lands that they've inhabited prior to the colonization of Europeans, as well as those who were brought in voluntarily to the New World, who freed themselves and reconnected themselves with cultures from which they've been torn. So even if you think you're black, you're an Aboriginal and indigenous to America, according to the Organization of American States. So this United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People applies to you. All right, so let's just go over some of that stuff. Let's just go over some of the rights that indigenous people have in this document that President Obama signed when he was in office, that no other president would sign besides him. There's 46 articles. Let me just skip through some. I haven't done this in a few years. I went over this 2017 or something like that. Right here. Let's check this out. Article 3. Indigenous people have the right to self-determination. By that virtue of the right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. Now, since you're not citizens of the United States, you have to be a citizen of something. So that's where it talks about political status and the right to self-determination, so we can elect our own officials, our own president, our own king, our own emperor, our own sultan. Then it talks about political status. When you look up the definition of nationality in the law book, it'll say it determines your political status. So in order to enforce Article 3, you have to declare your nationality. Then you'll talk about, you'll see all these black conscious people talk about the black dollar, black Wall Street, black economics, crowdfunding, group funding. Well, there you go right there. That's your right as an indigenous person. Then look, number 4, you have the right to exercise self-determination again, the right to autonomy or self-government. So we have the right to elect our own officials. Municipal, right? That's city, mayor, our own police, right? Protect ourselves. Every indigenous individual has the right to a nationality. There you go, right there. Right? What else? Gentrification, look. Indigenous people and individuals have the right not to be subjected to forced assimilation or destruction of their culture. That ends gentrification right there. The states shall provide effective mechanisms for prevention of and redress for any form of forced population transfer, which has the aim or effect of violating or undermining any of their rights. So this right here just ends gentrification. So we shouldn't be complaining anymore. This is the solution. Any form of forced assimilation. So we can't be held to the same standard as these Europeans on our land because you're forcing us to assimilate. So that ends gentrification again. Any form of propaganda designed to promote or incite racial or ethnic discrimination against them. So all this negative social media stuff about black people or criminals, this ends that, as long as you claim a nationality. What else? Indigenous people shall not be forcibly removed from their lands or territories. So you can't be evicted, nor can you be enforced into Section 8. And right here I put the returning of ancient artifacts because you'll see, our, Egyptian sphinxes and heads and Olmec statues in British museums, where the British people are being paid off of what our ancestors did. So we have the right to all that stuff back. Then when you look up the Grand Canyon, you'll see that there are Egyptian artifacts found in the Grand Canyon. We want those back too. Then you'll see in Article 11, it talks about renaming places because, as an example, there's a place called Roger Williams Park out here, and Roger Williams didn't come here until 1638 or 1636. So it's not called Roger Williams Park. So we have the right to call it something else, right? So instead of bringing down statues and that's it, how about we do stuff like this, right? Let me see right here. Oh, look. Indigenous people have the right to participate in decision-making in matters which would affect their rights through representatives chosen by themselves. States shall consult and cooperate in good faith with indigenous peoples concerned through their own representative institutions in order to obtain their free, prior, and informed consent before adopting and implementing legislative or administrative measures that may affect them. So as an example, if all of us are in the same area and they're talking about trying to put up a stop sign or a red light with traffic cameras in our area and we say, nope, that's going to affect us, they can't do it. If they're saying, hey, we're going to have the police heavily patrol this area and we say, nah, you can't do that, well, then they can't do it. If we're going to say, hey, you're infringing on our right to bear arms by making us get licenses, well, guess what they have to stop doing? Right? Check it out. Indigenous people have the right to maintain and develop their political, economic, and social systems or institutions to be secure in the enjoyment of their own means of substance and development, so that's business, and to engage freely in their traditional or other economic activities. So we don't need a license to conduct business. Indigenous peoples deprived of their means of substance and development are entitled to just and fair redress. That means compensation or assistance. Indigenous people have the right without discrimination to the improvement of their economic and social conditions, including, amongst other things, that's what that means, amongst other things, in the areas of education, employment, vocational training and retraining, housing, sanitation, health, and social security. So when you see housing, that's not Section 8. That's all these mansions that are out there. That's all these multifamily homes that are abandoned. There should be no dark-skinned person homeless in North America. Check this out. States shall take effective measures and, where appropriate, special measures to ensure continuing improvement of their economic and social conditions. So let me just bring that back real quick. States shall take effective measures and, where appropriate, special measures. So they're showing you a distinction. So effective measures would be moral support, right? And making sure that people don't stop us. And where appropriate, special measures would be giving us money. You say, are people in jail for plants, right? Indigenous people have the right to their traditional medicines and to maintain their health practices, including the conservation of their vital medicinal plants, animals, and minerals. So what gun charges? What drug charges? What are you talking about? What drug charges? A plant? What are you talking about? That's not a drug, it's a plant. Indigenous people have the right to maintain and strengthen their distinctive spiritual relationship with their traditionally owned or otherwise occupied and used lands, territories, waters, and coastal seas and other resources to uphold their responsibilities to future generations in this regard. So look at that. You have the right to your land back, right? Okay, check this out. Go on your phone again. Google search federal adverse possession. Let me see if I can pull it up on my computer real quick. Juju! Oh, he's still around? Can you come here real fast? I don't know if my computer is gonna load. Can you do me a favor? You have your phone? Can you Google federal adverse possession? Y'all doing it with me, right? Teamwork makes the dream work, right? It popped up on here.
You found it?
Yeah, I found it. I just wanted to make sure it popped up.
Okay.
I'm still might use your phone though, just in case. All right, never mind here.
Sure.
Yep. See that? Law.cornell.edu, right? Adverse possession is a doctrine under which a person in possession of land owned by someone else may acquire valid title to it so long as certain common law requirements are met and the adverse possessor is in possession for a sufficient period of time as defined by statute of limitations. So look, you see how they talked about common law, right? Common law requirements and then statutory limitations. Statutory limitations do not apply to you because you're not a citizen of the United States. Common law applies to you though. So now look up, if you're whatever state you're in, look up adverse possession. Then get a Black's Law Dictionary and look up the difference between adverse possession and squatting. And you'll see squatting's illegal, adverse possession is not. Why is adverse possession not illegal? Because adverse possession is dealing with common law. What was common law? Common sense. So what is adverse possession? Think about this. Do you know what a lost and found is? You know how they hold things in a lost and found until no one comes? When no one comes to claim that thing which is lost and found, that's called abandonment. So now in trust law dealing with estates, which is land, there's something called what? Abandonment. What is abandonment? Abandonment means no one is claiming something, right? So what the Europeans do is, since we think we're from somewhere else, and we think we're black and from somewhere else, and we think that we're Indians, which makes us wards of the United States, they're claiming our land because we're not making a claim to it. And law, that's called escheating. Then, since you don't know who you are, you think you're Indian and black, they put a mortgage on your house. Or they put Indian title on your house, which ain't ownership. Look up mortgage and look up Indian title. It's not ownership of shit. You pay them. How are you going to pay someone on your land? And then, if you're not a citizen of the United States, black man, why are you paying them anyway? Didn't they bring you here involuntarily? Don't they owe you? So what you paying them for? Then Indian, aren't you claiming this is your land? So what you paying them for? Anything. Right? Adverse possession. Because Article 25 says you have the right to your land and resources back, right? And it talked about traditionally owned or otherwise acquired, right? So why are all these people talking about buy back the block? How are you going to buy back something that's yours? That's like saying I lost my laptop on a train. It got sent to the lost and found. I go to the lost and found, and they're trying to charge me for my laptop. No. I have right of claim. And as indigenous people, guess what we have to the land? Right of claim. Look it up. It's trust law. Look it up. Message to the black man. Why are you struggling? Why are we struggling? Why? Because our people perish by the day for the lack of knowledge. That's why. Then, since we lack knowledge, we can't unite. Why? Because we lack knowledge. We don't have any reason to come together because we lack knowledge. Then, in our lacking of knowledge, we're arrogant and hypocrites. So we can't even unite with each other because we're so busy fighting each other. Meanwhile, the facts are right there. It's up to you to believe it or not. And you don't have to believe the facts. The facts are the facts. You don't have to believe that the sun is hot. It is. But instead of just dealing with facts, as an example, the sun is hot. Instead of addressing that, we'll say, well, the earth is flat. Well, the earth is round. Okay, how is that affecting your everyday life? It's not. If the earth is flat or round, it doesn't affect you because you're still living on it just fine. You know what affects you? Not knowing who you are. Why? Because then you wouldn't even think of adverse possession. You would think of buy back the block. Then since you're thinking buy back the block, you're already submitting to this feudal system, which you don't know is feudal because you don't know what feudal means. You just grew up in the system and you think it's normal. So you're submitting to this feudal system not knowing that House Resolution 25, the Fair Tax Act of 2019, admits that taxes are having a disproportionate adverse impact on our people. And that our people are being taxed higher than anyone else. That our jobs are being destroyed because of federal income tax. That it raises the cost of employment for our people. Then it raises the cost of establishing your own business. Then they're going to force you to sell your business to pay off those taxes. Look up House Resolution 25, Fair Tax Act of 2019. Oh, my bird just flew on my head. Then you also don't know about House Resolution 5404. The bill to define the dollar as a fixed weight of gold. You don't even know that in 2018, March 22nd, 2018, that the United States Congress, the highest legislative body of the United States, declared to the world that the United States dollar has lost 96% of its value. So you're talking about buy back the block and black dollar with something that's worth 4% of itself? What are you buying with 4% of something? So that means if something's $1 and you give them $1, you only gave them 4 pennies. And you think you're gonna buy something back? You're gonna buy something back that way? Then you're not even gonna look up Don E. Williams versus the IRS commissioner to see that since the United States dollar is only worth 4%, which means in the eyes of the law, it has no value. You don't know that contract law requires in order for a contract to be valid, there has to be something called legal consideration, which is only two requirements for something to be considered legal consideration. One, it has to have value in the eyes of the law, which USD does not. Or two, it has to have value to the parties, which is why in Don E. Williams versus the IRS commissioner, it was stated that Federal Reserve notes are considered conditional payment because you believe that it's money, so they're accepting it as it's money. Why? Because it only has a negative effect on you, hence House Resolution 25, Fair Tax Act of 2019. You see where I'm going with this? See where I'm going? They control it. You don't. You keep chasing this paper, literally. You say it, chasing the paper. And guess who prints it? Them. So if you're chasing something that they can print at will, Who controls you? Okay, you don't believe me? Look up the General Education Board. Look it up. Google it. Wikipedia is going to pop up. Then click on the philosophy of the General Education Board and see why you haven't learned any of this stuff, black man. Yeah, they taught you in school that you were black. They taught you in school that that paper's money. They taught you in school that you had to pay taxes. But guess what they didn't tell you in school? To look up 26 CFR, which stands for Code of Federal Regulations 601.602A. And it'll say what? Taxes are based on voluntary compliance. They're not going to tell you that. They're going to tell you that taxes are mandatory. Then guess what you're going to do? You're going to try to disprove me, right? Then it's going to say on the IRS website, on the IRS code, that taxes are mandatory. Then it's going to give you a subsection that you're not going to look up. And nowhere in that section does it say you are obligated or is it mandatory for you to pay taxes. Then you're not going to cross-reference Article 1, Section 8, which states that Congress is the only body that can levy and assess taxes. And last time I checked, IRS does not spell Congress. Then again, cross-reference House Resolution 25, Fair Tax Act of 2019, and you will see that they're trying to abolish the IRS. Why? Because it's unfair and inequitable, says it right in it itself, along with everything else I just said. See where this is going? Message to the black man. You ain't black. You ain't Indian. You have a nationality. What is that nationality? I suggest you look it up. I suggest that you look up the Olmec heads found in North, South, and Central America. Olmec, O-L-M-E-C. Click on images, and you'll see a big-nosed, big-lipped stone head, several tons, with a tassel hanging from his head, with a fez wrapped in a turban. And they'll tell you that the Olmecs were found here in America over 2,000 years ago. So who are you really, black man? Are you a citizen of the United States? Do their laws apply to you? Do you have to pay their taxes? Can their police patrol your areas? Should you be in the projects? Should your family be on Section 8? Should your people be in jail for having plants? Meanwhile, these Europeans are creating this so-called medical marijuana, and they're making billions on synthetic poisonous so-called cannabis, which ain't even the original genetics of the plant anymore. Should your people be in jail? Shouldn't your people be compensated for that, black man? Or do you not care? Or do you just want to complain about the problem and not find a solution? Which one do you want? It's up to you. You're God, right? You're a king, right? You're the original man, right? So that means it's up to you, nobody else. So what are you going to do? Are you going to sit there, march and pray and beg for your stuff back? Or are you going to do what Malcolm X told you to do? And take your shit back by any means necessary? Didn't your beloved leader Malcolm X say, I am non-violent with those who are non-violent with me? Once you become violent, you nullify my non-violence. Isn't that what your beloved leader said? Isn't it? Didn't your beloved leader Malcolm X say that nationalism is the wave of the present and the future? And that nationalism is what's giving freedom to oppressed people all over the world, the people of Somalia and Tanzania and Somaliland and Uganda? Didn't he say that to you? Didn't he say that you and I will get our freedom through nationalism? Isn't that what El Hajj Malik El Shabazz said? Did you know that his name is El Hajj Malik El Shabazz? Did you know that that's on his tombstone? Why don't you know that? Why don't you know it? Who's been hiding this from you? Do you know what the COINTELPRO is? Do you know what the counterintelligence program is? Do you know that part of the counterintelligence program is to prevent our people from nationalizing and forming a militia to protect ourselves and separating from the United States? Did you know that? Did you know that the COINTELPRO was created in 1908 with the creation of the FBI? Did you know that? Did you know that on Senate.gov, they admit that to you under the Church Committee? Did you know that they have a book that's 1,005 pages talking about the FBI COINTELPRO and the assassination of what they call a black messiah who can unify, electrify, and militarize our people for our salvation? Did you know that they do that? That they plan to murder those people and suppress information? And keep, did you know that they, in the COINTELPRO FBI program to assassinate our people and destroy our movements, did you know that the FBI stated they wanted the Nation of Islam to just be a religious group? And that's it, nothing more, nothing less? Do you think that they worked? Or do you think that they succeeded in doing so? Did you know that there's someone named Jeff Fort or Chief Malik who was trying to unite with Libya when Libya was trying to unite all of Africa? And Libya was trying to help Jeff Fort or Chief Malik free our people here? And that Libya offered Jeff Fort or Chief Malik guns and money to help in our liberation? Did you know that Libya made the same offer to the Nation of Islam and they refused the guns, but they took the money? Did you know that? Did you know that Jeff Fort, so-called gang leader, had a building called the Fort in Chicago, and on it, it said Moorish Science Temple of America? Did you know that? Did you know that this blood so-called gang leader, founder of the Stones, the Peace Stones, had his people wearing turbans and fezzes and uniting every single gang in Chicago to stop violence against one another, to protect one another? Do you know who stopped them? The FBI. Why don't they want you to know this information? Why is it that anytime someone goes on camera and says you're black, black, blackity, black, 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 black this, black economics, black power, blackity, black, 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 nothing happens to them? No FBI investigation. No one really cares. No trolls in their comments saying you're not black. There's no such thing as black. There's no such thing as black dollar. There's no such thing as black economics. There's no such thing as buy back the block. They're not trolls on their comments saying all this stuff. Why is it that there's only trolls, people saying you're not Moors when you say you're a Moor? Why is it that when you wear a turban and a fez like the ancient Americans, the Olmecs, they say that's a bucket hat? That's a KFC hat. You guys are going to jail. How come they say stuff like that on Moors pages but not black people? You ever thought of that? Have you ever seen the FBI COINTELPRO where they admit that they're going to cause confusion and keep people away from certain organizations that will actually benefit them? Did you know that there was someone named Fred Hampton, black man? Do you know that? Someone named Fred Hampton, who's part of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. The Black Panthers created free food and healthcare programs for our people. Did you know they did that? Did you know that the FBI called them a hate group? Did you know that the FBI, in collusion with Chicago police, the same Chicago police that was writing letters to Jeff Fort, who I told you about earlier, writing letters to Jeff Fort saying that Panther members were trying to murder him? You know that the FBI created those letters to do what? To try to get the El Ruckins, the Peace Stones, the Moors under Jeff Fort, to fight with who? The Black Panther Party. Why? Because just like Jeff Fort was uniting all the gangs, guess what people like Fred Hampton was doing? Uniting everybody else. Guess how old Fred Hampton was? 21 years old. Guess what happened to 21-year-old Fred Hampton? The FBI, via their counterintelligence program, launched their COINTELPRO against Fred Hampton, got one of our people who was facing charges to turn on Fred Hampton. That person drew out a map of Fred Hampton's house, drugged Fred Hampton, and that same night, Chicago police, in collusion with the FBI, went inside Fred Hampton's house and knew exactly where to shoot into his room to murder him. And then guess what? Congresswoman Omar from Minnesota announced to the House of Representatives a few years ago that Fred Hampton was murdered by the Chicago police in collusion with the FBI COINTELPRO. Then guess what? Congresswoman Barbara Lee in 2017, look it up, C-SPAN, House of Representatives, Barbara Lee, Congresswoman, admitted that COINTELPRO 2.0 is on the rise under the name Black Identity Extremist. And guess what else? Other congressmen and women from the Congressional Black Caucus stated that the Black Identity Extremist report was not issued under any other president before Trump. Which means what? Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions authorized the continuance of COINTELPRO. Why don't you know any of this, black man? Why don't you know any of this? Why? What don't they want you to know? Look it up. Peace.